Hey YouTube. In my previous video, I spoke about how the Fed, planned to crash the system and how they use quantitative easing, printing all of this money, not necessarily to save the system, but actually to speed up the process of causing the system to crash. Because if you print more money, it's currency destruction. It's not actually currency preservation. So in this video, I decided to just type in the term, what is money? And the first thing that popped up, it says a current medium of exchange in the form of coins and banknotes collectively. The asset, property, and resources owned by someone or something, wealth. Now, in order for money to be wealth, it has to be something that is called an asset. It can't be debt based like fiat currency. So while I was doing this research, I saw this article by the IMF.org, that's the IMF, International Monetary Fund, says back to basics. What is money? So I decided to pull that article up and we're going to read a little bit from that to see what they consider to be money and what they say about the fiat. So this is an article. It says, what is money? It was written back in September 2012. It says volume 49, number 3. What is money? Without it, modern economies could not function. Money may make the world go round, as the song says. And most people in the world probably have handled money, many of them on a daily basis. But despite its familiarity, probably few people could tell you exactly what money is or how it works. In short, money can be anything that can serve as a store of value, which means people can save it and use it later, smoothing their purchases over time, a unit of account, that is, provide a common base for prices, or a medium of exchange, something that people can use to buy and sell from one another. Sorry. So that gives you the basic description of what money is. So it says perhaps the easiest way to think about the role of money is to consider what would change if we did not have it. So I'm going to skip all of that and I'm going to leave a link to the article right below this video for you to check it out and read all of it if you would like to. But I'm going to go down here to where it says many monies. It says, to put it a different way, money is something that holds its value over time, can be easily translated into prices, and is widely accepted. Many different things have been used as money over the years, among them cowrie shells, barley, peppercorn, gold, and silver. It says at first the value of money was anchored by its alternative uses and the fact that there were replacement costs. For example, you could eat barley or use peppercorns to flavor food. The value you place on such consumption provides a floor for the value. Anyone could grow more, but it does take time. So if the barley is eaten, the supply of money declines. On the other hand, many people may want strawberries and be happy to trade for them, but they make poor money because they are perishable. They are difficult to save for use next month, let alone next year, and almost impossible to use in trade with people far away. There is also the problem of divisibility. Not everything of value is easily divided, and standardizing each unit is also tricky. But for example, the value of a basket of strawberries measured against different items is not easy to establish and keep constant. Not only do strawberries make for bad money, most things do. But precious metals seem to serve all three needs: a stable unit of account, a durable store of value, and a convenient medium of exchange. They are hard to obtain. There is a finite supply of them in the world. They stand up to time well. They are easily divisible into standardized coin and do not lose value when made into smaller units. In short, their durability, limited supply, high replacement cost, and portability made precious metal the more attractive as money than other goods. Now here's the beautiful part of it now. It says until relatively recently, gold and silver were the main currency people used. Gold and silver are heavy, though, and over time, instead of carrying the actual metal around and exchanging it for goods, people found it more convenient to deposit precious metals at banks and buy and sell using a note that claimed ownership of the gold and silver deposits. Anyone who wanted to anyone who wanted to could go to the bank and get the precious metal that backs the note. Eventually, the paper claim on precious metals was delinked from the metal. Now, this was done in 1971 by Roosevelt, and he took basically the world reserve currency, which was the US dollar, and he delinked it from gold and took it off the gold standard and caused the dollar to become pure fiat. It says when that link was broken, fiat money was born. Fiat money is materially worthless, but has value simply because a nation collectively agrees to ascribe a value to it. I'm going to read that again. Fiat money is materially worthless, but has value simply because a nation collectively agrees to ascribe a value to it. In short, money works because people believe that it will. But what happens when people stop believing that it will? That's the question most people don't never ask. And if the money that you work for is materially worthless, then why do we even work for it? Why do we even sacrifice our time or health, basically family or values or morality, all of this stuff, just for a piece of paper that's worthless? It's dead also with a dead man face on it. And we're killing ourselves to go into the grave trying to work and get this thing for ourselves. Why do people do that? That's the question that people need to ask themselves. Back to the article. I'm going to read this part again. It's in short, money works because people believe that it will. As the means of exchange evolved, so did its source, from the individual in barter to some sort of collective acceptance when money was barley or shells, to governments in more recent times. Now, the governments are the ones that issue the money, and the governments are the ones that abuse that money which they issue and rob from the citizens through something called inflation. By devaluing the currency, it takes more of that currency to buy the same goods, and that's how the governments steal from their citizens. It's called inflation. Even though using standardized coin or paper bills made it easier to determine prices of goods and services, the amount of money in the system also played an important role in setting prices. For example, a wheat farmer would have at least two reasons for holding money: to use in transactions as cash in advance, and as a buffer against future needs, precautionary savings. And then it says, suppose winter is coming and the farmer wants to add to his store of money in anticipation of future expenses. If the farmer has a hard time finding people with money who want to buy wheat, he may have to accept fewer coins or bills in exchange for the grains. The result is the price of wheat goes down because the supply of money is too tight. One reason might be that there just isn't enough gold to mint new money. When prices as a whole go down, it is called deflation. On the other hand, if there is money in circulation but the same level of demand for goods, the value of money will drop. This is inflation. When it takes more money to get the same amount of goods and services, says see what inflation is in the March 2010 issue of F&D. Keeping in mind demand for the supply of money balance can be tricky. So now it gets into manufacturing money. which our governments have been doing for the past 8 to 9 years. Well, actually, it's longer than that because Alan Greenspan, he actually started printing money before Ben Bernanke and now Janet Yellen. Now the whole world is printing money. So basically, all the fiat are proving their worth. They're worthless. The dollar, when in 1930, when it was backed by gold, the dollar was actually, as good as gold. Today, the dollar has devalued to only worth about 3 cents because the price of gold is actually about $1,250 an ounce. Back then, it was like $20 and 60 something cents for an ounce back in the 1920s. So did the ounce of gold change? No. The actual dollar actually devalued against gold. Manufacturing money. Fiat money is more efficient to use than precious metals. Oh yes, it's very efficient, but it still is worthless. I mean, you imagine something that is worthless is actually more efficient. That's like driving a car that has no engine. Is that efficient? No, it's worthless. You need a car with an engine, just like you need fiat to be backed by something that's tangible, asset. Adjustments to its supply do not depend on the amount of precious metals around. That's right, because you could print as much fiat as you want, but gold and silver is finite. But that adds to its own complication. Precisely because there is finite amount of precious metals, there is a limit on the amount of notes that can be issued. So if you have a gold-backed currency, you can't go print money, buck wild hillbilly, you know, just because you have a need or you see something necessary. Besides, the poor man doesn't benefit from that because that trickle-down effect means that the man who prints the money, he gets the full effect of it first. And you who are at the bottom, you get suckered or screwed. If there is no gold or silver to back money, how do governments know how much to print? That's a good question. That gets into the dilemma governments face. In other words, if there's no gold and silver, they could print as much as they want. They could party like it's 1999. On the one hand, the authorities will always be tempted to issue money like they are now because governments can buy more with it. Exactly. They can buy more, but you and me got to slave, what's it, keep calm, slave on. We gotta go and slave, but they could print it for free. On the one hand, the authorities will always be tempted to issue money because governments can buy more with it, hire more people, pay more wages, and increase their popularity. That's right. On the other hand, printing too much money starts to push up prices. If people start expecting that prices will continue to rise, and we're going to be there in a moment in this whole entire system because everybody's printing, they may increase their own prices even faster. Unless the government acts to rein in expectation, trust in money will be eroded, and it may eventually become worthless. That is what happens during hyperinflation. To remove this temptation to print money willy-nilly, most countries today have delegated the task of deciding how much money to print to independent central banks, which are charged with making the call based on their assessment of the economy's need and do not transfer funds to the government to finance its spending. The term printing money is something of a misnomer in itself. Most money today is in the form of bank deposits rather than paper currency. Most money today is actually fiat. Most money today, even now they're trying to get rid of fiat so that the governments could have more control because if you don't have a way where you can control your own money, I tell you what, if you got more than $5,000 in the bank, I dare any one of you to go to the bank and tell them you want to withdraw all your $5,000 one time and see if they don't put you on some list. Imagine, that's your money that you work hard for. But I would dare you to go to the bank and do it. I've actually put some of my friends to do that there. And here's another thing. The bank is paying you 0% interest. And you probably know one of your friends for years. And if your friend said to you, let me hold your money for you, and you've been knowing that person for years, You wouldn't let that person hold your money, even though you know that's your friend. But you would trust the strange bank with your money. And now, there's a law that actually been written that shows that we are the creditors to the bank. So whatever money we got in our pocket or whatever money we deposit with them is as if we're the creditor and we lend them that money. So instead of them lending us money now, we're the ones that actually lending them money. So if that bank goes under, then they get to keep your money. And you as a creditor have to find a way to get your money. So the rest of the article said belief can fade. And when a currency, when the trust in a currency or the trust in anything fails, we all know it's sudden destruction for that. So countries that have been down the path of high inflation, example Venezuela, recently, Brazil. You can go and check in the news and look at these countries right now. Puerto Rico, So countries that have been down the path of high inflation experience firsthand how the value of money essentially depends on people believing in it. In the 1980s, people in some Latin American countries, imagine that was in the 80s, and it happened in the 90s again, and here it is happening right now again. Some people in Latin American countries, such as Argentina actually is in hyperinflation, and Brazil, again, gradually lost confidence in the currency because inflation was eroding its value so rapidly. And these are the same countries suffering from it. And don't forget Zimbabwe. They started using a more stable one, the US dollar, as the de facto currency. This phenomenon is called unofficial or de facto dollarization. The government loses its monopoly on issuing money, and dollarization can be very difficult to reverse. It can be, because all these fiat currencies obtain their value based on what the dollar says they are. So once people lose faith in that currency, it's hard to go back. So everybody's going to basically be looking for dollars, spending that thing faster than you know. Now you can actually order Starbucks coffee for people who like to drink coffee. Some policies governments have used to restore confidence in a currency nicely highlights the faith part of money functioning. In Turkey, for example, the government rebased the currency, the lira, eliminating 6 zeros in 2005. Overnight, 1 million liras became 1 lira. So imagine you got a bank account that's supposed to be $150,000 or $250,000, and next thing that thing says you got $10 or $25 in the bank account overnight. Brazil, on the other hand, introduced a new currency in 1994, the real. Some people say the real, but that currency is real fake, to be honest with you. In both countries, citizens went along demonstrating that as long as everyone accepts that a different denomination or a new currency is the norm, it simply will be. Just like fiat money, if it is accepted as money, it is money. Now, if you go and you look in the Bible and you pull up the word current money, the word money is actually silver, according to the Most High. The word current, if you pull up the word current, that's where they got currency from. And that Hebrew word, it means to transgress. So currency, which is tied to fiat, means to transgress. The word money, which is tied to silver, it actually means honest weights and measure. It means that this has to have a unit of account. It has to be something that has some type of weight, something that people can use where one man don't feel he's getting robbed from another. The system that we're on right now, they can actually raise or lower the value of our currency and our debt through interest rate. You always hear the Fed is talking about their mandate. Their mandate is the interest rate policy. And I mentioned in the video that I believe that the printing of the money was done to actually crash the system. Not to save it, but to crash it. Because when you print so much money, you're debasing it and you're making the currency worthless. Just like the IMF website is telling you that the fiat currencies, fiat money is worthless. I mean, it says fiat money is materially worthless, but has value simply because a nation collectively agrees to ascribe a value to it. But most people save their money in a bank in fiat. But it's written right there on the note. What does it say? This note, which has to be paid, is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Now, how would you take a note to pay another note? A debt in itself is a note that needs to be paid, and a note is a debt that has to be paid. So the dollar doesn't say, Federal Reserve gold or federal or redeem this dollar like it used to say, this $10 is redeemable in gold at the United States Treasury. It doesn't say that no more. It said this note. A note is what? A debt that has to be paid, like a car note or bank note. And a debt is basically a derivative of that note. That's what forms, So why would people even save their money in this thing? This whole system is jerry-rigged for everybody, every one of us to become suckers or serfs, to put it like that. In other words, they're stealing money from us today and leaving us in debt tomorrow. Or they're borrowing from tomorrow in order to basically pay themselves today. And to be honest with you, all I can say is, according to them, it says until relatively recently. And believe me, that's like maybe about 40 years. It's the life of the US dollar being off the gold standard. Gold and silver, which was 1971, gold and silver were the main currency people used. And I believe we're going straight forward back to creation, And I believe personally that according to David Stockman, he was actually on the Reagan's monetary policy committee, I guess, the director of monetary policy or something like that. He said after March the 15th, when the debt ceiling reaches its limit, that's when basically the whole system is going to start to come down, because the government will only have about $200 to $250 billion, between that time and June. Now, I don't know if he's going to be right, but I know that the Fed has a meeting that same Tuesday and Wednesday, and I know that they expected to raise interest rate. So if they're raising the interest rate and that debt ceiling debacle comes up, know that it's going to be even harder to fund trillions of dollars in money for infrastructure that Donald Trump wants to do. And I believe this is going to actually cause the system to show some signs of weakness. And if this thing festers into the summer and the Fed keep raising interest rate, well, gentlemen, let me just put it this way. As long as you see the Fed start raising interest rate, know the system is getting ready to crash, just like in 2008. That's exactly what it did. And for those of you who want more information on that, there's a video on YouTube. You could go ahead and Google it, called The Money Masters. Believe me, they create bubbles by lowering the interest rate, and they pop bubbles by actually raising the interest rate. And what do I mean by that? That's the reason why the housing bubble popped. Because if you got a house on a subprime loan for say 2% interest, and then you roll that loan for 3-4 years, and then the Fed start raising interest rates, it's going to be harder to finance that loan, because remember, when it's time for you to refinance that loan, the interest rate is going to be way higher than when you got the loan. So what people are going to start to do? They're going to start dumping the real estate. Well, actually, they're going to start dumping their cars and stuff, because the subprime moved into actually the loan for the car loan industry. So, and now you got student loans that is over $1 million, and people who don't have no jobs coming out of school and stuff. I mean, they already don't have our future generation tied with 2 blocks on their foot and another big old chunk of block around their neck. So they ain't even gonna be able to even see from the time they drop them from the time they come out of school. They're already drowning in debt. That's the way of the system. If you got your fiat and you want to keep your fiat, remember, each and every day, the prices of the things that you got to buy and need are actually going up. Not because the unit of that thing is going up, but because the currency is actually being debunked, or what you call devalued. So, or debunked. That's what, that's another word for it too. Anyway, I hope that this video, shed some lights and adds to the previous video. And I pray that each and every one of you would gain an understanding that the Most High have placed on me. I did a lot of research in order to, come out of this system. So I'm saying to each and every one of you all, take the time to learn about the economy, because this is the way that you're going to actually know exactly how to invest for yourself and for your family in the future. With that, if you love this video, give me a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel, and by the great grace of the Most High, I'll have more video coming your way. Anyway, shalom and have a good one.